A little further. I'm now joined in studio by, he's a CA, he's an activist, he's a humanitarian, but he's wearing his hat as a political analyst at Khaya Sithole. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you and good afternoon to the viewers.
All right, so is it a surprise for you that we live in the world of social media, so awareness I don't think is the issue so much anymore. Are you surprised that so many young people have not registered to vote?
Not at all. And I think the key thing here that the political parties are missing is that for any person who is young and is trying to interrogate whether they should participate in the political process, there is a question of what happens if I do participate. Does it then change the type of things that I think need to be addressed? So if you're a young person in South Africa and the primary issues affecting you are issues of unemployment, weak education skills and things of that nature, the question that you should be asking yourself, well, if I do go and register to vote and then I do vote, will this translate to something being done differently in order to address the issues that matter most to me? And what you see with South African political parties is that they struggle to make that link very explicit. So you don't have a party that is coming across that is aggressively saying to young people, look, if you're unemployed, I will fix the unemployment crisis for you, provided you vote for me, because these are the things that I'm going to do. So for as long as young people struggle to see the link between them waking up, queuing up and voting, and it having a material impact on whatever circumstances matter most to them, you're going to find a lot of them saying, well, actually we'll sit this one out because it really isn't going to change much in my own life.
So, and a lot of the opposition parties were blaming the ANC for that apathy, saying that, look, nothing's changing. Do they then wash everybody with the same brush that, the governing party has failed, therefore all political parties are not going to be up for the job?
The way the youth tend to engage with this is that they say, well, we can see that this party is failing, but then the responsibility of the opposition is not to simply reinforce that message. It is to simply say, yes, they have failed, but this is what we're going to do differently. So for example, if the ANC comes out and says in its manifesto they're going to create 275,000 jobs, you'd expect that a credible or a logical opposition party would be up in arms the next day saying that here's our strategy for 300,000, because suddenly that looks like you are going to do better than what the ANC is doing. To then wake up and simply say, oh, the ANC is not going to get to the 275,000 because they haven't done it for the past 20 years. It's a good message, but I'm not sure how it then convinces me as a young person to go up and vote for you, because I don't know what your number is.
But young people, I know for sure, are not stupid. They are quite bright and switched on, and they get what's going on. How is it that they're not translating my vote equals action? Why is it that they just reduced to nothing's going to change, my vote doesn't matter?
Look, the reality is that if you look at all the issues that have been very prevalent in the youth sector over the past, being questions of unemployment, even access to education, the great tragedy of South African political parties is that as far as the youth of South Africa is concerned, the only time where they advocated for a cause and it translated to some change, whether the change happened to the level they wanted or not, was during a Fees Must Fall campaign, and that was not through a political process. So young people now have this idea that, well, actually there are ways of getting change to be done that bypasses the political system. And in that end, the political system hasn't come back since 2015 and said, well, even though you got those gains using that particular system in 2015, you can actually achieve even more by going through a political process. So they haven't been able to sort of respond to what the youth has identified, which is to say, we can identify issues, we can find ways to address issues, whether through mass mobilization or through being more coherent in our message as a youth. So if that is the platform that we think works best for us, we are going to go to a political party that can say to us, we have something that works better than that. And unfortunately, the political parties still haven't found a way to articulate that message to young people. So young people are of the opinion that if you want things done, there's different ways of doing it, and the political system is just not it.
So is it also part of the equation that these parties' leadership doesn't look like us as young people?
Yeah, I think one of the key things is that if you then try and figure out who are the youth leaders of the three most prominent political parties, you literally have to go and dig up and say, oh, so this is the person in charge of that youth league, this is the person in charge of this youth wing. So the visibility is very lacking. And the strange part, of course, is that if you then see where young people are interacting, where young people are having conversations, this would be through social media. You'd expect that by this time in this election cycle, when you log onto your social media account, you're being bombarded by this face of this young person saying, this is our manifesto as the party, this is how the youth fit in. But I'm not seeing that. Even the ANC had its manifesto a couple of weeks ago. That manifesto is 68 pages. I know very very few young people who have got the appetite to go through 68 pages of what one political party the things ought to be done in an electoral year, and then say, oh, this is the part that works for me, so therefore this is the part I need to be dealing with. On the other side, the ANC has got access to a massive amount of youth leaders. You'd have thought they would have identified 5 or 6 individuals and say, this is the page of the manifesto that you're going to go and communicate to people who look like you, people who interact with you, and people who are as young as you. And they haven't even done that. So you literally have to go and dig and say, so what was in that manifesto? In that manifesto, what related to me as a young person? And unfortunately, young people aren't in the habit of digging.
You know, something like 5 million people have turned 18 since the last election. I mean, that is a good chunk of a vote.
A lot of seats. A lot of seats, eh?
So now, you know, a lot of people might say that the EFF looks like a youthful party, so that they should have been able to mobilize people to go and register. And I'm just wondering then, who stands to gain, do you think, by youth not registering to vote?
Look, I think one of the key things we have to acknowledge is that the apathy that we see now is obviously fully to be blamed on the fact that the governing party over the past 20 to 25 years hasn't really delivered to the youth to the extent that the youth wants it to deliver. So of course, if one party is being blamed for the apathy that is set in, the reality is that if there's another party that comes in and sort of looks as the alternative voice, it will be the party that gets some of the young people to say, well, we've been apathetic because of that particular party, but we now look, now it seems like there's a party that is talking to the issues that relate to me. So you'll see some people then say, well, simply because the EFF is now in the picture and it's really opening up the political conversation, perhaps I'm going to give the political system one last opportunity. Whether I vote for the EFF or even the ANC or the DA or any other party, it's really then saying there's a new voice in the conversation, and perhaps this new voice is then leading to new policies or new ways of thinking being shamed in the political system. So I do think obviously a new political party has the ability to be a bit more nuanced, a bit more flexible in the things that it says. It doesn't have to be stuck with the legacy issues that perhaps a party like the ANC or even to a lesser extent the DA has. So a newer party can then sort of say, we will do things differently, without people saying, but you've been around for 10, 15 years and you haven't done it. So if you go to the Western Cape and the DA tries to say, we'll do things differently, the question was, what were you waiting for?
What are you doing?
For the national ballot, right. The ANC has the same problem. So I think the EFF does galvanize some people to get into the system, but whether this is everybody who's been apathetic is something that we have to wait and see.
So does that mean that the new Labour Party, the new Good Party, the ACM, the ATM have the potential to garner some of these youth votes, or are people looking at these and saying it's the same old politics, just a different t-shirt?
Look, it is very difficult to see from the manifestos. Some of them haven't even been launched, but even when you look at how these parties are communicating out there, there isn't a single one that has said, look, if 5 million people are going to be voting for the first time, then that's my target. So they seem to have adopted the ANC's philosophy of a broad church, which simply says you appeal to everybody else, and well, you try to appeal to as many stakeholders as possible, and in the end you don't end up targeting one constituency and saying that we are here to represent you. And perhaps if you're a new political party and you don't have the funding or the architecture to go and run a national campaign, you can simply say, what's the cheapest way to sort of get mass appeal? And that would be social media, and social media is where the young people are. Remarkably, none of the new parties seem to have tapped onto that to say, for this particular election, this 5 million people are my target. Even if you score 20% of that, that's 1 million votes. That is massive. But all of them are trying to be as good as the ANC has been, even though they're all saying that the ANC has been bad. So it's a weird way of politicking.
All right, I've run out of time, but very briefly, whoever wins and the youth don't show up to vote, that means that they've got this constituency that's out there that, as you perhaps alluded a little bit earlier on, could be a problem to manage going forward.
That constituency will feel alienated, and then they will say that this system is not legitimate because we did not endorse it. And of course, when people start questioning the legitimacy of a system, it makes it easier for them to simply confront it and reject anything that happens out there. And what you want when you win an election is to reach some consensus with society to say, this is where we're going. So you can't afford to have one core constituency saying, actually, we do not recognize your electoral mandate because not only did you fail to appeal to us, but we didn't vote for you because we didn't believe in any of the things that you've said. So it will become very important for the political parties to understand that the youth constituency is important, and the importance of it is that if you don't cater to them, you might see 2015 reviving itself in a different form.
All right, Khaya Sithole, always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much indeed for your insights.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we